So we have completed income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement, and within these statements, we also learned about their analysis and the tools used for analyzing income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. Now, this next reading is financial analysis techniques. It again discusses the same techniques such as ratio analysis and common size analysis, and some more techniques or types of analysis. So before we start, one of the key points to note is what is the objective of financial analysis process. Why? Because whenever you are performing a financial analysis process, two key points to note are objectives and difference between computation and analysis. Because computations are different from analysis. So what is the objective? So first of all, you need to clarify the objective, that why are you actually performing the analysis. By objective, it means that what is the purpose of analysis, what questions will you answer, what level of detail will be needed, what data are available, what are the factors or relationships that will influence analysis, and what are the analytical limitations. So answering these questions would help you craft your process, or would help you find craft the way or make a way towards reaching the objective, or towards answering the problem definition, or towards accomplishing the purpose of the analysis. So you should know what data is available, how will you use it, what will you do with that data, what analytics will you perform, and all that. Now moving on, distinguishing between computation and analysis. So computation means organizing the data or doing calculations or estimate with the data, and then analysis means analyzing those computations to form the future, to answer the problem definition, or to look out the trends, or to find out the changes in trend, and to find out what will happen in future. So computations are mostly associated with past, and analysis is mostly associated with future. That is analyzing past and present so that you can predict future. So an effective analysis would encompass both computation and interpretation. That is, you compute the data, or you do your calculations on the data and find out trends, and then you interpret it through your analysis. So you need to know what happened, that maybe computations are able to tell you why did it happen, and did it advance the company's strategy, and what will happen next. So this is how you perform analysis: what happened, why happened, and was it aligned with the company's strategy, or did it change the company's strategy, and now what will happen next. Based on what happened and why happened and the company's strategy, to find out what will happen in future. So this is how you analyze. So analysis can be of two types, of past performance and forward looking. Past performance means finding out why did something happen, what happened, why it happened, and what actually drove that, or what were the reasons for that particular performance, or that particular strategy, or what outcomes were resulted from that particular strategy or that particular performance. And forward looking is what will happen in future. What is the trend, what will be the trend in future, will the past trend continue, will the past trend not continue, how will company be impacted in future, how will industry change in future, how can companies products change in future, how will consumer trends change and customer trend change, and all that. And generally most important one is the forward looking analysis. Past performance analysis is generally done to support the forward looking analysis, because what has happened in past only matters to analyze what will happen, or to predict what will happen in future. Now moving on, how do you do this, or what are the tools and techniques that you use? You use ratios, you use common size analysis, which we have already discussed. In addition, you can also use graphs or regression analysis. Starting with ratios, when you are using ratios, key point to note is that ratio is a number or an estimate. It doesn't tell you anything about the performance or position. So for you to give meanings to ratio, you need to compare it with something else. So either you compare it with a benchmark, or you compare it with competitor, or you compare it with industry as a whole, or you compare it with past trend, or you compare it with management's target. only then will you have some meaning to the ratio. Ratio in itself wouldn't tell you anything. You need to compare it with something else. So this is also a limitation of ratio. Why? Because in itself it wouldn't tell you anything. You need to compare it with something else. Another limitation is that ratios usually involve judgment. No particular ratio is good or bad. There is some judgment involved. One analyst may find some ratio to be good, another may find that to be bad. Secondly, ratios are calculated using financial statement figures, and different financial statements may be prepared using different accounting methods. Maybe there is a company following IFRS, another company following US GAAP. Maybe there is a company using straight line method of depreciation, another using accelerated depreciation method. So that is again a limitation, that ratio you might not be able to compare one company's ratio with another company's ratio. Another key limitation is that maybe companies' operations are different. Companies are not similar. If they are not similar, you wouldn't be able to compare their ratios, or their ratios will be significantly different. So the key limitation is that one single ratio cannot tell you anything. You need to compare it with something else or benchmark it against something else. But obviously there are many benefits as well, and this is the ratio analysis is very important. What are benefits? It helps you understand microeconomic relationships within a company, and those relationships can help you forecast earning and free cash flow. So for example, profitability ratio will help you forecast earning once you have forecasted sales. Maybe sales past growth in sales would help you forecast future growth in sales. They help you analyze flexibility of the company. They help you analyze company's position. They help you analyze company's performance. They also help you analyze management's ability, whether is it delivering on the targets or not. Changes in company and or industry over time. Comparability with peer companies or relevant industry. So due to these reasons or these benefits, ratios are very important, but obviously there are limitations as well. Everything has limitations and benefits. How do you calculate ratios? Using data. Where do you get that data from? From financial statements or from other databases such as Bloomberg, CompuStat, FactStat, Thomson Reuters. These can provide you financials of the companies or can also provide you the ratios themselves. That is, they can calculate the ratios and provide you the ratios as well. Another tool is common size statement, which we have already discussed. So for example, in common size analysis of balance sheet, you take total asset as 100%. In income statement, you take sales as 100%. In common size analysis, you can have two types of analysis. One with the other companies or competitors, which is cross-sectional, or a time series analysis or a trend analysis, which is over a period of time for the same company. Relationships among financial statements. So you can compare how much are assets growing, how much is revenue growing, and you can find out are those consistent or not. Another tool can be graphs. So graphs can help interpret, put a lot of information in an easily interpretable manner. So if you have put, let's say, asset base into, for let's say first company, second company, third company, fourth company, fifth company, with respect to different categories of assets, you can easily compare them and you can easily find out that this company has a lot of fixed asset, but it also has a large amount of receivable. This company has a large amount of cash, so it has most liquidity because cash is highest and fixed asset are lowest. So among these, you can find out easily that this is the most liquid one. Or if I tell you that this is the time series for the same company, this is, let's say, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003 and 2004. So you know that over time company's liquidity has deteriorated. Liquid instruments have become lower, large fixed assets have become higher, and receivables have significantly increased. That means company's credit has significantly increased, and you can match it with cash revenue, whether revenue has also grown or not. Another tool can be regression analysis, and it is generally useful in finding out relationship between two variables. So for example, if you want to find out how are company's sales related to GDP growth, so you can run a regression of sales growth to GDP growth and find out what is the relationship. Are these two related or not? If related, then what is the relationship. And this can also help you analyze cyclicality. So for example, you find out that both are strongly related, both move in the same direction, that means company is cyclical. So these are some tools for analysis: ratios, common size analysis, graphs, and regression analysis. Moving on, what are different types of ratios in income statement? We discussed income statement ratios, which were primarily profitability ratios. In balance sheet, we discussed ratios which were liquidity and solvency ratios. And in cash flow statement, we discussed ratios related to cash flow, in which we had performance ratios and coverage ratios. For balance sheet, we mostly looked at the ratios which only included balance sheet items. For income statement, we only had the ratios which only included profit item. For cash flow, however, we compared cash flow with balance sheet and income statement. In the same way, we can also have ratios which have items from income statement and balance sheet both. For example, asset turnover, sales divided by assets. One item from balance sheet, one from income statement. So now in these ratios, we will consolidate all the ratios and divide them into different categories. So if we look at the overall ratios, they can be divided into 5 categories: activity, liquidity, solvency, profitability, and valuation. Profitability is done, solvency is done, liquidity is done. Activity and valuation are new. Activity relates to performance position comparison. What does it mean? It relates to the company's efficiency. So for example, sales asset turnover is your activity ratio. Receivables turnover, activity ratio. Payables turnover, activity ratio. So inventory turnover, activity ratio. So all these are generally, these ratios will mostly have one performance item, that is from income statement, and one asset or liability item, that is from balance sheet. Generally that would be the case. And they help you analyze efficiency, as well as help you analyze the pace of collection of receivables or payables and management of inventory. Then comes valuation. Valuation ratios include those ratios which help calculate the price of the or value of the company. So for example, price to earnings, price to sales, price to book value, EV to EBITDA. All those ratios which are used to calculate value of the company or price of the company, that are valuation ratios. And again, we discussed it earlier as well. How do you use ratios? You cannot have a ratio and give meaning to it until and unless you compare it with something else. And what do you compare it with? You need to look at economic conditions. You need to look at industry benchmarking. You need to look at companies' goals and strategy. Now we will discuss these ratios one by one. In activity ratios, we have inventory turnover. So turnover generally means some kind of sales, either sale or cost of goods sold. And turnover will generally come in numerator. So if it is inventory turnover, it means inventory, which is asset, in denominator, and some kind of sales in numerator. Inventory is valued at cost. So that means sales which you have on numerator should also be cost of good sold. Payable turnover, payables in numerator in denominator. And what are payables related to? Payables are related to purchases. When you purchase, then you pay for it. So purchases in numerator. Fixed asset turnover, sales divided by fixed asset. Total asset turnover, sales divided by total assets. Working capital turnover, sales divided by working capital. And overall working capital. And generally we take average of these: average inventory, average payable, average total asset, average fixed asset, average working capital. Now what are days of inventory on hand? That tells you for how many days do you actually hold inventory before you sell it. From buying till selling, how many days are there for which you hold it. So what is it? It is simply 360, which is, or 365 number of days in year divided by inventory turnover. Similarly, if you divide receivables turnover, if you divide number of days by receivables turnover, that will give you days sales outstanding. That how many days does it take you to recover your receivables. And similarly, if you divide number of days by this payables turnover, that will tell you number of days of payables. And what is your operating cycle? Operating cycle is days of sales outstanding minus days of payables. So the days that in which number of days in which you recover your amount and the number of days in which you make a payment. The difference of these two is your operating cycle. It is the cash movement. And what is net operating cycle? Sorry, this is not operating cycle. This is operating cycle is DSO plus DOH, days on of inventory on hand. And what is net operating cycle? Net operating cycle is DSO plus DOH minus days of payables. This is net operating cycle. Then you have liquidity ratios, which we have already discussed. One of the new ratios is defensive interval ratio. This defensive interval ratio tells you whether do you have enough liquidity to meet your daily expenditures or not. If it becomes less than 1, that means company cannot continue further. Why? Because company does not even have money to liquidity to pay off even 1 day's expenditure. Or if it is decreasing, that is a sign of big concern. So it tells you for how many days can you actually operate with the current liquidity. So if it is 7, that would mean that you can operate with the current liquidity for 7 days, after which you wouldn't have enough liquidity, you will have to liquidate more asset. If it is 30, that means you can operate for 30 days with the current liquidity, after which you will either need to generate more cash or you will need to sell off something to have cash. This ratio particularly comes into use or is more useful when you are analyzing a company which is near bankruptcy or which is not able to turn around, which is burning cash into its operation, so that you know that how much cash does it have for operating the operations, or for how many days can it survive with the current cash. Denominator is daily cash expenditure. Numerator is the same as quick ratio, but denominator is daily cash expenditure. So you do not compare it with current liability, but you compare it with daily cash expenditure. So it tells you how much liquidity do you have. For how many days can you operate with the current liquidity. So if a company is near bankruptcy and its defensive interval ratio is 30, that means either it should turn around and generate cash, or it should raise a loan. Otherwise it will go bankrupt after 30 days. It wouldn't have money to pay off liabilities. Sorry, what's 50? So 50 is generally an average ratio that any company should have enough liquidity to meet its about 50 days of or 1.5 month of obligations. So generally it is assumed that a company should have more than 1 month of obligation, and less than 2 months is fine. So somewhere in between 1 and 2 months, so 1.5 month or 50 days of to meet 50 days of obligation with the current money. But when a company is near bankruptcy, its ratio will start declining, and when it is declining, then you will need to keep a strong watch over it. So for example, if it turns to 30, that means now this 1 month is very critical. Either it turns around or it goes bankrupt. Then if it continues to fall, if it falls to 15 and does not rebound, that means it is now more is a big concern. If at that point of time you know that company is not able to find a loan, then it means that company will eventually default or go bankrupt. So it generally it is ignored for large stable companies, because you know that whenever they need money, they would have running finance facilities, or they would have they will be easily able to borrow money. So even if a large company is running overdraft, that is not a concern, because you know that it is making money and it is paying off dividend. That's why it is running a overdraft. It is able to make money from operation. But when a company is near bankruptcy, or when a company is burning cash into operation, not generating cash into operation, then this becomes very important. So for any company burning cash, or having a, by burning cash I mean having a negative cash flow from operation, this ratio is very important, and you should keep a strong eye on this ratio. Cash conversion cycle is net operating cycle, which we just discussed. Remember the difference between operating cycle and net operating cycle. When you are asked to calculate operating cycle, only take this. When you are asked to calculate net operating cycle, then take all of it. Make sure you read the question right. Solvency ratios we already discussed. Coverage ratios we discussed earlier in cash flow statement, in which we discussed that interest coverage is cash flow from operation plus interest plus tax divided by interest payment. And we discussed another way of calculating it is taking earning before interest and tax and dividing it by interest payment.
ये ऊपर solvency में debt to asset ratio and debt to capital aren't they the same?
Total assets plus total shareholders, total debt plus total shareholders equity. So here what you do is that you do not, here you will only take the total common shareholders equity.
Okay,
So you wouldn't take the preferred shares. But here when we talk about total shares, we have taken all the reserves and everything. Otherwise, generally these two will be the same, because generally preferred shares are ignored anyway. So these two are generally the same. Debt to capital and debt to asset ratio. Interest coverage, fixed charge coverage. Fixed charge means any fixed charge. Interest is a fixed charge, but then there is another fixed charge which is lease payment. So if you want to test the coverage of all the fixed charges, then you take lease payment as well as interest payment in denominator. And if you are taking both in denominator, then in numerator you will take that income which is available to pay these two. So you will add lease payments to EBIT. That is earnings before interest, before tax, and before lease payment. So as long as you know the concept of this ratio, that what is it, you should be able to drive the ratio. There is no fixed ratio. Some may be using some ratio, others may be using another ratio. Some may be using CFOs in cash ratio, some may be using cash or any other FCF or free cash flow or any other measure. So knowing the concept is more important than memorizing the ratio. Profitability, we earlier discussed gross margin, operating profit, pre-tax, net profit margin. Return on investment, operating return on asset is operating income divided by total asset. Return on, when we say only return, that means we are talking about net return. So net income divided by average total asset. When we say return on total capital, it is earnings before interest and tax divided by short and long term debt and equity. ROE, net income divided by total equity. Return on common equity, net income minus preferred dividend divided by average common equity. This means we have excluded the preferred equity. And generally, practically, whenever we calculate ROE, generally we are calculating return on common equity. So if someone quotes ROE, generally they are quoting return on common equity. But theoretically, these two are different. But generally, when we say ROE, we mean ROE. We mean return on common equity. All these are very basic, simple ratios. This part is very important. You should remember it. ROE is a measure of return on equity, so it is an important measure. It tells you how much return are you making on equity. But just looking at ROE is not enough. ROE can increase or decrease due to many reasons. So the key thing which we have been discussing throughout all the analysis is that just looking at what is changing is not enough. You should know why is it changing, and then you should answer, will that change continue in future or not? That is important. And in order to know that, you should know why is return on equity changing. So for that purpose, you will break down return on equity into different components. And this is known as decomposition of ROE, and this decomposition is known as DuPont analysis. Remember this DuPont analysis. So what is return on equity? Return on equity is net income divided by equity, average equity or whatever. Now net income divided by equity can be written down as net income divided by assets multiplied by assets divided by equity. It is same thing, right? What is this? This is return on asset. And what is this? This is financial leverage. So that means it can be broken down into two components. So if return on equity is changing, either it will be due to return on asset or it will be due to financial leverage. Maybe you have taken more debt and so return on equity has increased, or maybe your return has increased on overall assets. Now moving on, this net income to asset can be further broken down into two components. So you can write it as net income to sales multiplied by sales divided by asset. Same thing. Sales cancel out, NI over AS, net income to A. Any problem so far? So that means it can further be broken down into these components, which is net income to sales and sales to asset. So let's say you found out that it is changing due to return on asset. Then return on asset can change due to two reasons. One is changes in asset base, and other is changes in profitability. You should find out what is causing this change. And then net income to sales can also be dependent on different components. So for example, what is net income to sales? It can be EBIT to EBIT to sales multiplied by, I think, EBT divided by EBIT divided by EBT. So it can be net EBIT to sales, which is EBIT margin, EBT divided by earnings before tax divided by earnings before interest and tax, which is interest burden, or net income divided by earnings before tax, which is tax burden. Tax burden means how much of it is being earnings are being diluted due to tax. So net income, which is after tax, divided by income, which is before tax. So the differential would be due to tax, which is burden caused by tax, burden caused by interest, and EBIT margin. So it will further tell you whether this net margin is actually coming in from improvement in profitability, or is it due to changes in tax or changes in interest. So this will help you EBIT to sales, EBT, and EBIT, EBT2 divided by EBIT. So whenever analyzing change in return on equity, and this will be net income divided by equity, you should find out what is actually causing this change. If it is coming in from here, that is very good and that is sustainable. If it is maybe coming in from tax, that is due to tax changes and not due to company's ability to generate more return. If it is due to interest burden, that means maybe a company has taken more debt or leverage and its risk has increased. If it is coming from financial leverage, then that is not due to company's ability to improve efficiency, but rather it is coming in from taking debt or changing capital structure. If it is due to return on asset but asset turnover, that means it is coming in due to improvement in efficiency. Profitability hasn't improved, but efficiency has improved, and due to which it has improved. So you should find out where is it actually coming from, and this is known as DuPont analysis. The equation for DuPont analysis is this, breaking it down into 5 components: net margin, interest burden, sorry, this is tax burden, this is interest burden, this is EBIT margin, this is asset turnover ratio, and this is financial leverage. So these 5 ratios make up ROE. So it is very important to know. That was DuPont analysis. Moving on further with equity or equity analysis. When you are analyzing equity, you are generally analyzing it for shareholders, right, or investors. So what are you concerned with? You are concerned with growth, that what is the upside, and profitability. So what you are focused on? You are focused on income statement. What is the growth? What is the profitability? Will the company give me higher return in future? Will the company give me lower return in future? You know, if company performs well, you will have higher return. If company performs badly, you will have lower return or losses. How do you perform the analysis? You first understand the business of the company. How does company make money? What does it buy? What does it sell? What is the business model? Existing financial profile. How much borrowing does it have? What is the capital structure? What is the growth? What is the profitability? Then you forecast performance. So you look at the past, you combine past trend with your expectation, and based on that you forecast future performance. So once you have forecasted future performance, let's say you have forecasted income statement, balance sheet and cash flow statement. Then you select a valuation model. So for example, you select a DCF model. This means you will forecast cash flows and then discount those back to present. Then once you have the valuation model, you convert forecast into valuation. And once you have the value, you make the investment decision. If value is higher than the price, you buy it. If value is lower than the price, you sell it. Otherwise, you hold. So this is the whole process of equity analysis. Now, when you are performing valuation, there can be different types of valuation models which you can use. Generally, valuation models can be categorized into 3 types. Market-based valuation, also known as relative valuation. And how do you do this? Using valuation ratios or discounted cash flow or residual income approach. They have mentioned these 3 here, but the third type is another type is actually asset based valuation, which is asset minus liabilities. But these are the 3 commonly used. Asset based valuation is not very commonly used method. So these will again come in later in detail, but for now just to give you a perspective. So what is valuation ratios? In valuation ratio, you select a ratio for valuation. For example, I selected PE, that I will do valuation using PE. Then second step, you select a specific number or justified number for that ratio. So for example, I say that this company's PE should be 10. How do I say it? Maybe I looked at the past trend, maybe I looked at the competitors, maybe I looked at the industry, maybe I looked at the my assumptions or my judgment, and if somehow I say that due to this and that reason it should be 10x. Then third step, if it should be 10x, then what the price should be. So if P to E is 10, then what should be the price? Price should be 10 into E. What is E? It is earnings per share. So that means I will take the EPS, find out EPS, I multiply EPS with this 10x and I come up with the value or price. Similarly, I can do P to B. I select P to B, I come up with a multiple, and based on that I multiply it by book value and come out the value. I can do P to S, I can do P to CF or any other ratio, EV to EBITDA or any other ratios. For discounted cash flow, I will forecast future cash flows and discount them to present. Now these future cash flows can be anything. Maybe I take dividend as future cash flow. If I take dividend, this will be known as dividend discount model. Maybe I take FCFF. If I take FCFF, this will be known as FCFF valuation. Maybe I take FCFE. If I take FCFE, that is known as FCFE valuation. What is residual income? In residual income, we again forecast some income, but that income is residual income. And then we discount it back to present, and that gives us the value. The question is, what is residual income? So residual income is the extra return which you make on top of the requirement by the investor. So how do you get value? You get value by discounting back residual income to present and adding it to current book value. So what you are actually doing is you have taken a base book value and then you are adding any extra value which you will make. And how do you get this extra value? This is ROE minus required rate of return. So ROE is the return that company is making. Required rate of return is the return which is required by the investor. So the difference is the extra return which you are making on top of the investor's requirement. And then if you multiply it by equity, this will give you the absolute amount of that additional income. So you forecast this residual income for all the years, you discount it back, and you add this extra income to book value, that current book value, that gives you the value of the company.
The required return is the cost of equity.
This is the cost of equity. Yes. So these are these different methods which you use. Valuation ratios, we just discussed PE, PCF, PS, price to book value. There can be different ratios which can be used.
And E is what? Equity?
Where?
So,
Equity, book value. Per share quantities, basic EPS, diluted EPS, we have already discussed in previous reading. Cash flow per share means cash flow divided by number of shares. Cash flow is cash flow from operations. EBITDA per share is EBITDA divided by number of shares. Dividend per share is dividend divided by number of shares. Dividend payout ratio was discussed in earlier readings, which is dividend divided by net income. Retention rate is what you retain. So for example, if you are paying out 60% as dividend, then 40% is retention ratio. Sustainable growth rate is retention rate multiplied by ROE. So again, something from being repeated from previous readings. Sustainable growth rate is retention rate multiplied by ROE. This B is the sign for retention rate. And what is retention rate? It is 1 minus payout ratio. And when do you use it? We usually use it in Gordon growth model. So that is about equity. Now there are multiple types of analysis. There can be analysis for different purposes. We have so far discussed equity analysis, and we discussed that it is focused on performance. As it is focused on performance, it focuses on income statement, which means it focuses on growth and profitability. Concern is that how much more money will the company make, or what is the extra return that will be made. Why? Because equity shareholders would benefit if company make more and more money. Another type of analysis can be credit analysis. It is by the creditors. If someone has given loan to the company, then he would want to know whether the company is in a good position to pay back or not. So what will it be focused on? It will be more focused on position. Remember, it does not mean that equity analysts wouldn't look at the position or credit wouldn't look at the performance. All would look at all the performance, position and flexibility measures. But the key focus is on performance here, and the key focus is on position here. Why position? If let's say loan is of $50 and company makes $100, it will be able to pay this loan. If company makes instead of 100, if company makes 600, still it will only pay $50. So what is important is position, ability to pay off this $50, and not this 100 or 600 or 800 or $900. That is more relevant for equity analysis. Why? Because for equity holder, if company makes 100, that goes to equity. If company makes 600, 600 goes to equity. Here, no matter how much company makes, only 50 goes to credit holder because the loan is $50. So it is more, they are more interested in position. And then key focus is on balance sheet, and within balance sheet, key focus is on liquidity and solvency, and also cash flow, so that you know whether the company has enough liquidity to pay or not. Maybe it has enough assets but not liquidity, so that is also important. So credit analysis is focused on position, balance sheet, liquidity, solvency, and cash flow statement. Any questions so far? So it is the analysis of credit risk. What is credit risk? Credit risk is the risk of default. So credit analysis is evaluation of credit risk. Now there can again be two things. So for example, maybe you are performing a credit analysis for investment, so you can do all this analysis yourself. Or maybe you find out what is the credit rating on the company. What is credit rating? Credit rating is the rating given to a company by third-party agencies based on their credit profile. So a third-party agency, for example, S&P or Moody's, will analyze the company's credit risk and will give it a rating, a good rating or a bad rating, whatever it is. And based on that, you can find out, okay, this is the rating, this is a good rating, so credit profile is good, credit risk is lower, this is a bad rating, so credit profile is bad and credit risk is high. How do they give the rating, or how does the credit rating process works? So in credit rating process, you meet with management and you find out and you understand the industry and the business model and all that. Then you tour major facilities, factories, offices, warehouses, and whatever. Then you have meeting of a ratings committee where analyst recommendations are voted on, and the factors which are considered are business risk, financial risk, and evaluation of management. When we say business risk means any risk which can impact sales or core operations. By core operation we mean sales. So any risk which can impact sales is a business risk. For example, a fire breakout in your warehouse, or maybe demand for a particular product falling down or crashing due to any reason. Financial risk is related to financial losses, that is debt covenant, analysis of debt covenants, evaluation of capital structure, coverage, profitability ratio, and all that. And then evaluation of management, whether management has the ability to make company grow or not, or whether management is interested in making company grow or not. So these three are analyzed, and then there is a meeting in which these three are voted on, and after that ratings are created and distributed publicly, and then they are monitored as well. That is, if rating agency thinks that now company's fundamentals have changed and there is a revision required in rating, they will revise it. One key point to note is that ratings will lag the market. Why? Because it will take, let's say something bad has happened to company A. Now rating agency will take some time in doing analysis and then coming up with a new rating and then issuing it. It can be at any point of time. So rating can change at any point of time, but then again it will need some time for them to do analysis and then come up with a new rating and its justification. While if something bad has happened, investors would know already, and in equity market the share will already move. So one of the disadvantages of rating is that they tend to lag the market. They, by the time they are issued or changed, company's fundamentals would have already significantly changed. What are the selected credit ratios used by Standard Poor's? So there are many ratios, some of which that are used are EBIT interest coverage, EBITDA interest coverage, FFO funds from operations. What is funds from operations? Just like we have cash flow from operations, there is another measure, fund from operations. Generally, normally for companies we have cash flow from operation, but when we talk about REITs have fund from operation. So it is a kind of or a similar to cash flow from operation, but in REITs. Return on capital, fund from operations to debt, free operating cash flow to debt, discretionary cash flow to debt, net cash flow to capital, debt to EBITDA, total debt to total debt plus equity. I don't think that you need to memorize all of these. As long as you have an idea about it, you should be able to do it. You should know what they are focused on. So if you look into it, they are focused more on EBIT, EBITDA. Why? Because these are proxies for cash flows. They are focused on FFO, CFO. They are focused on debt. What they are mostly doing is that they are comparing a proxy of cash flow with either the interest payment or the debt payment. Why? Because you need to know how much cash is company generating and is that enough to pay off debt or not. And enough to pay off what? To pay off interest and debt. If it is enough, then company is in good shape with respect to credit rating, and if it is not, then company would have a lower credit rating. So moving on, next segment is business and geographic segments. So when you are analyzing a business, it is not whether for equity purpose or whatever, and more primarily for equity and even for credit analysis. It is not just enough to look at the total sales, for example, net revenue or total profitability. You should also know that what is actually driving it. So maybe it has different businesses, maybe personal care, home care, foods, maybe it has different businesses, and each of these would have different growth and different profitability. So let's say if a news comes up that company is investing into food segment, so you should know, in order for you to know its impact on total revenue, you need to know that whether its growth is higher than others or lower than others. Or if for you to know its impact on profitability, you should know whether its profitability is higher than others or lower than others. If a company is investing into a high profitability segment, that means future profitability will increase. If it is investing or expanding operations into a low profitability segment, that means in future profitability can decrease or contract. Similarly, there can be different geographies. So maybe it is in emerging markets, it is in developed markets, and so on. So if it is expanding in emerging markets or introducing new products in emerging market, you would know that growth in emerging markets is higher, and so overall growth will increase. But if it is introducing new products in developed markets, you would know that in developed markets growth is a bit lower, so overall growth wouldn't see much of an impact. So you should analyze segment wise margin, turnover, ROA, debt ratio to be able to analyze impact of changes in one segment. And last part is model building and forecasting. So how do you build model or forecast? So first of all, you take data through financial statements, past 5-year financial statements or whatever. You analyze it, data and analysis. Then you have now you have past, and you know what has happened in past. You combine it with expectations. So this is my past year data, let's say 5-year data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I know the trend, how has sales moved, how has income moved, how has expenses moved. And I want to forecast future. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how do I forecast future? I look at this trend, I combine it with my expectation or assumption, and based on that I forecast future. That what will be the future sales, future in cash flow, futures expense, futures future income. Then you build a model and you forecast future performance that we have just done. In your model, you will have a sheet for data dump, you will have a sheet for analysis purposes, you will have a sheet for assumptions in which you will put in expectation assumption, and then you will have a sheet in which you will show past income statement and future income statement, past balance sheet and future balance sheet, and past cash flow and future cash flow. And once you have done this, then you select a valuation model. If you are performing valuation, for example, you select a valuation model, for example, you select DCF. Then you select the major, for example, you select FCFF. So you make a valuation sheet, you use the income statement and balance sheet to forecast cash flows. Then you use cash flows to forecast or to estimate FCFF. Then you estimate WACC, and then you discount back FCFF to present to arrive at the value of the firm. So this is how you make the model or your business modeling work. Once you have arrived at the value, this is not enough. Why? Because this value is dependent on some assumptions. If those assumptions change, value will change. So you perform some more analysis, like sensitivity analysis or scenario analysis. What is sensitivity analysis? Sensitivity analysis tells you that how much will value change if you change a single input. So for example, if I change sales growth from 10% to 12%, how will value change? If I change profitability, how will value change? Scenario analysis tells you that how will the value change if you change more than one input assumptions at a time. So for example, I change sales from 10 to 12, and at the same time I also change profitability from 40% to 44%. So in this scenario, how will the value change, or what will the value be? So sensitivity tells you how will the value change if one input changes. Scenario analysis tells you how will the value change if more than one input changes. So you can make a base case scenario, you can make a bull case scenario, you can make a bear case scenario, or you can make multiple scenarios, or you can run simulation that we discussed earlier in Monte Carlo. What is simulation? That you run, for example, thousands of scenarios, and in those thousands of scenarios you get thousands of values, and then you form up the distribution of those values and find out how much is the probability of a specific value. So how much is the probability of this value? 10. How much is the probability of 12? How much is the probability of 13? How much is the probability of 14? So this is how you run simulation. This is how you make model, and then you analyze model or use the model. Any problem, questions so far? Again, some questions. Comparison of a company's financial results to other peer companies for the same time period is called, for the same time period with peer companies. Cross-sectional time series is over a specific period of time. In order to assess a company's ability to fulfill its long-term obligation, what should an analyst look at? Solvency. And for short term, it should be liquidity. And for efficiency or payment of receivable or payment of to suppliers activity. Which ratio would a company most likely use to measure ability to meet short term obligation? Current ratio. It is a liquidity ratio. Payables are activity ratio, and this is profitability ratio. So A is the answer. It tells you ability to meet short-term obligation. When developing forecast, analysts should most likely develop possibilities relying exclusively on result of financial analysis. So should you only look at financial analysis? No, use the results of financial analysis, correct. Analysis of other information, correct. And judgment, correct. Aim to develop extremely precise forecast. Do you develop precise forecast or do you also perform sensitivity and scenario? Or also perform sensitivity and scenario? So B should be the answer. So C, C, A and B
सर ऐसी आसान
is
है
the
नहीं है
answer.
इसकी ज्यादा मुश्किल है ये आसान है बहुत